Welcome to Lecture 5 of our PMI-CP exam preparation series. Today we are diving into a critical component of construction leadership, stakeholder management for communication. This session focuses on the triad of analysis, engagement, and resistance management. If you have spent any time in the built environment, you know that technical plans are only as strong as the people who support them. Our goal today is to learn how to effectively connect your project plan to the actual people who execute it every single day. In construction, we deal with rigid schedules and fixed blueprints, but stakeholders are fluid and dynamic. Understanding how to navigate their needs is what separates a technician from a true project leader. We aren't just looking at who these people are. We are looking at how their influence can either accelerate your project or bring it to a grinding halt. By the end of this module, you will have a clear framework for identifying who matters most and how to keep them aligned with your project goals. We will start with the technical tools of the trade, the matrices and grids that help us categorize our stakeholders. From there, we will move into the strategic territory of how to handle resistance. Construction is inherently disruptive, and change is often met with pushback. This lecture provides a structured way to manage that pushback proactively. Let's dive into our specific learning objectives to see exactly what you need to master for the exam. To ensure you are fully prepared for the PMI-CP exam, we have established 3 primary learning objectives. First, you must master the identify and assess phase. This involves learning how to correctly use power, interest, and engagement matrices to categorize every stakeholder on your list. This isn't just an administrative exercise. It's about knowing where to focus your limited energy and resources to maximize project stability. Our second objective is to strategize. We will apply a specific 6-step closed-loop process to establish communication plans that actually work. Communication should never be a one-way street, and this process ensures you are constantly gathering feedback and adjusting your approach. Third, we will learn how to overcome resistance. You need to be able to distinguish between prevention, proactive management, and reactive management of change resistance. Pay close attention to the exam focus on this slide. The exam is going to test your ability to select the correct matrix for a specific construction scenario and judge the best communication approach for a resistant stakeholder. It's about your situational judgment as much as your knowledge of the terms. Let's start by looking at the 2 fundamental reasons why we manage stakeholders in the first place. Why do we put so much effort into stakeholder management? It really comes down to 2 twin objectives. The first is improving team performance. When you manage your internal stakeholders well, you build trust, which naturally removes conflict. Furthermore, by establishing clear roles, you reduce the ambiguity that often leads to errors on a job site. A team that trusts its leadership and knows its role is a high-performing team. The second objective is overcoming resistance. Let's be realistic. Construction projects are inherently disruptive. We block traffic, we make noise, and we change neighborhoods. Effective management creates a cooperative environment that allows us to placate resistance before it reaches a level that stops the work. As Charles Kettering famously said, "The world hates change, yet it is the only thing that has brought progress." Getty Images explore. In our industry, we are the agents of that progress. Our job is to bridge the gap between the status quo and the improvement our projects represent. If we don't manage the human reaction to that change, we risk failure regardless of our engineering prowess. Now let's look at a real-world case study to see what happens when these objectives are ignored. To understand the stakes, we can look at the Signature Bridge project in New Delhi. This project suffered a major failure because it missed a critical deadline for approval from the Environment Clearance Board. When we look at the cause, it wasn't a technical error. It was a lack of a single point of ownership for that stakeholder relationship. The result was severe schedule delays and massive cost overruns. This case study highlights the common pain points you need to recognize for the exam. Conflict and distrust arise when roles are undefined. Scope creep occurs when messaging is vague, and stakeholders fill the gaps with their own expectations. And of course, delays are frequently caused by missed approvals or poor reporting structures. To prevent these issues, we follow a strict governance rule. Every stakeholder must have a single point of ownership within your project team to avoid any ambiguity. This person is the champion for that stakeholder's needs and the primary point of contact. This ensures that a critical board approval never slips through the cracks because someone else was supposed to handle it. Now, let's look at the specific tools we use to analyze these stakeholders. To be an effective analyst, you need the right tools in your toolkit. We rely on 3 specific matrices to categorize and track our stakeholders. The first is the power versus interest matrix. Its purpose is prioritization. It maps a stakeholder's ability to interrupt the project against their level of alignment or interest. This tells you exactly how much energy you need to spend on each person. The second tool is the stakeholder analysis matrix. Think of this as your deep dive tool. While the power interest grid gives you a snapshot, this matrix digs into the why. It helps you assess the political, financial, and even ethical motivations of your stakeholders. Understanding these drivers allows you to tailor your messaging to what actually moves them. The third tool is the engagement assessment matrix, also known as the CD matrix. Its purpose is tracking. It allows you to monitor a stakeholder's current level of support, C, versus where the project needs them to be, the desired level, D. By tracking this over time, you can see if your communication strategy is successfully moving the needle. Let's take a much closer look at that power interest grid. The power interest grid is the most common way to prioritize your time. You must understand these 4 quadrants for the exam. In the top right, we have manage closely. These are your high power, high interest key players. You must engage with them daily or weekly because they represent the greatest risk to your success if they feel sidelined. In the top left, we have keep satisfied. These stakeholders have high power but low interest. You must meet their specific needs, but be careful not to overwhelm them with day-to-day project drama. A classic example is a licensing board. In the bottom right is keep informed. These are your allies and eyes on the ground. They have high interest but low power, so you keep them in the loop to maintain their influence. Finally, in the bottom left is monitor. These are low power, low interest people. You check in on them periodically but do not spend excessive resources here. However, the grid is iterative. Never ignore them entirely, as their power or interest could shift as the project progresses. Now let's look at a specific quadrant that is a frequent trap for students. This is a critical exam insight for your preparation. Many candidates underestimate high-power, congé, low-interest stakeholders because they are quiet. These people don't care about your daily progress reports or your weekly newsletters. That's why they have low interest. However, they have the absolute authority to shut down your site in a heartbeat. Think of fire marshals, city inspectors, or licensing bodies. They aren't interested in your project schedule. They are only interested in whether you are following the rules. The exam logic is this: if a stakeholder is a gatekeeper but ignores your project meetings, then they belong in the keep satisfied quadrant. Your action for them is strict compliance. Do exactly what they require and do it on time. But, and this is key, do not flood them with trivial emails. They are busy and don't want the noise. They only want to know that the gate they guard is secure. Let's look at how this logic applies to a specific exam-style scenario. Let's walk through a typical exam scenario. You are building a high-rise, and the city chief fire inspector has the authority to stop all work if codes are violated. However, he rarely visits, missed your kickoff, and doesn't open your newsletters. You need his sign-off for the structural steel phase next month. How do you classify and treat him? The correct answer is C. high power, low interest, or keep satisfied. Let's look at why. He clearly has power because he can stop the work. But he has low interest because he ignores the daily details. If you tried to manage closely, you would likely annoy him with too much information he doesn't want. If you just monitored him, you would risk missing that critical sign-off. The keep satisfied approach means you ensure his specific code requirements are met and you reach out specifically for the sign-off without the daily noise. This is the strategic balance the exam is looking for. Now let's look at how we track engagement levels more broadly. Once we have categorized stakeholders by power and interest, we need to track their actual engagement level using the CD matrix. We use a scale of 5 levels. First, unaware, meaning they don't know the project's impact. Second, resistant, meaning they are aware but opposed. Third is neutral, where they have no opinion. Fourth is engaged, meaning supportive. And fifth is committed, meaning an active advocate. The matrix tracks where they are now, the current, C, versus where you need them to be, the desired, D. For a project sponsor, you likely want them at committed. For local residents who are currently resistant, your desired state might just be neutral. This is a critical insight. Your goal is not to make everyone a committed advocate. For resistant external parties, moving them from resistant to neutral, where they are no longer actively blocking your work, is a huge win and often an acceptable final goal. Stakeholder management is about pragmatism, not just popularity. To achieve this movement from C to D, we use a structured 6-step process. Effective stakeholder communication is a process, not a random act. We use this 6-step closed-loop process to move stakeholders toward our desired engagement level. It starts with step 1, summarize status, which is that C versus D assessment we just discussed. Step 2 is to decide requirements, identifying exactly what support you need from them. In step 3, you identify the key message, specifically focusing on the benefits for them. Step 4 is to identify the approach, which is your delivery method. Is it a meeting, an email, or a site tour? Step 5 is to implement the plan and actually send the message. Finally, step 6 is to gather feedback. This must be bidirectional. You aren't just checking that they received the message. You are listening for their reaction to see if their engagement level has actually moved. If it hasn't, the loop begins again. Let's look closer at step 3, as crafting the right message is often where project managers struggle. Step 3, identifying the key message, is another major exam focus point. Most project managers default to project-centric messaging. A bad message would be, "We are closing the road for 3 days." This message only tells the stakeholder about a disruption that benefits you, but creates a headache for them. To move a resistant stakeholder, you must transform that message to be stakeholder-centric. A good message would be, "We are upgrading utilities this weekend to prevent power outages during your business hours." Both messages describe the same road closure, but the second one aligns with a stakeholder benefit. The logic is simple. When crafting a message for a resistant stakeholder, do not just state what you are doing. Instead, state how it benefits them, or perhaps more importantly in construction, how it prevents a loss for them. People are much more likely to support a disruption if they understand why it's in their best interest to do so. This is the cornerstone of managing resistance, which we will explore now. Resistance to change is a natural response in any project environment. We can categorize sources of resistance into 2 groups. Internal resistance from your team or subs often comes from fear of the unknown, loss of status, or change fatigue. External resistance from the public or unions usually stems from disruption, environmental concerns, or labor agreements. We manage this resistance through 3 avenues. The first is prevention. This involves communicating the why and the risks of not changing before the change even occurs. If people understand that staying the same is more dangerous than changing, they are more likely to get on board. The second avenue is proactive management. This is about identifying sources of resistance early using tools like anticipating resistance workshops. Finally, we have reactive management. This is crisis management after something has gone wrong. This is the least desirable place to be, as you are now fighting an uphill battle. Let's look closer at that proactive workshop tool. The Anticipating Resistance Workshop is one of your most powerful proactive tools. It is a structured discussion held with targeted groups before you implement a controversial change. The objective is to identify where resistance will come from so you can design mitigation measures into your rollout plan. During these workshops, you want to create a unified value proposition. You are essentially aligning the change with the team's own values. You want them to see the personal or professional value in the new way of working. Here is an exam tip for your situational questions. If a question asks what you should do before rolling out a new system, look for answers like conduct a workshop or proactive engagement. Always avoid options that suggest you should simply mandate compliance. In the PMI world, forcing someone to do something is never as effective as educating them on why it's better for them. Let's see this in a final scenario. In this final scenario, your project is moving to a new digital daily reporting system. However, your older site foremen are refusing to use the tablets, claiming they slow down work, and they are reverting to paper logs. This is causing data gaps for the project. What is the best action? Option A is mandate tablet use. This is coercive and usually just creates more resistance. Option C is allow them to use paper. This is avoidance and doesn't solve your project's data problem. The correct action is B. Schedule a training workshop. Why? Because resistance often stems from knowledge and skill deficits. The foreman might simply be afraid they won't know how to use the tool. By scheduling a workshop, you address those skill deficits, and crucially, you sell the benefit by explaining how the system will save them time in the long run. This is the proactive, education-based approach the exam expects. Now, let's wrap up with our key takeaways. We have reached the end of Lecture 5. Let's recap the 4 key takeaways for your exam and your career. First, for identification, always use the power interest matrix. Most importantly, do not ignore the keep satisfied quadrant, those high-power, low-interest stakeholders who can shut you down without warning. Second, for your strategy, follow the 6-step loop. Remember that effective communication must be bidirectional. If you aren't listening for feedback, you aren't communicating. You're just broadcasting. Third, when dealing with resistance, aim for prevention by explaining the why and use proactive tools like workshops to catch issues early. Avoid being reactive whenever possible. Finally, maintain agility. Stakeholder management is an iterative process. People change, their interests shift, and their power can grow or shrink as the project moves through different phases. You must update your CD assessments regularly to stay ahead of the curve. Thank you for your time today, and good luck with your continued study.